to the look up the TV here. All right, we're just going to go ahead and start. Cool. I actually did a PowerPoint for this one, or not a PowerPoint, but a Google Slides. So, and we will we'll also make sure that this goes up in we'll create some sort of training drive folder or something like that, or I need to stand up. So we're going to go through, I know this seems like a more formal title than what it needs to be, but we want to kind of hit 3 or 4. My goal is that you can walk away with, okay, what can I do today in 20 minutes to just move the needle forward? I know I've talked about this before, but I never measured my productivity in time and hours worked. It was always in, right, what did I actually do to move the needle? And it's easy to get caught up in, especially if you got a couple of tough deals, it's easy to get caught up in deal doctoring and not be actually moving the needle on the next deal. So we'll talk about, and I know that this is a little bit silly, or it can sound silly if you're not really into that, but I really think that mindset is important. And part of that is kind of what we're talking about for the class, is developing that routine and making sure that you kind of are in the right groove. So we'll actually start with that. Did either of you guys do Ninja? I know you haven't built. Oh, you did? Okay. Did you do it, David?
Well, I didn't. I did only the Friday ones, like the Friday.
Okay. But you haven't taken. So one of the first things that they talk about is what's called your reticular activating system, which is hey, if you start looking for that, you want I wanted a Blue F-150, and so I started seeing those everywhere, right? So what you're focusing on expands. I don't know how it works. I don't claim to, but it does seem to work. If I said with my wife, we were looking for new car for her, you start seeing those everywhere. And the same thing can happen in your business if you are focusing on it. And I've done it myself, where it's, I'm focusing on the issues I'm having in a deal. It seems like if you have one issue with one deal, all your deals start having issues, right? That's how it always happens. So if you start focusing on, oh my gosh, I've got so many issues with these deals, you kind of reap what you sow on that. And I want to make sure. Sorry, let me just check this to make sure.
Slides. Are you going to be able to send this to us?
Mm-hmm.
Sweet.
I am. Okay. I think they can just I don't have to allow them into the meet, right? Will you pop on just no, never mind. I don't think you have to have permissions. It's all good. It's weird going from Zoom. Google Meet is a far better program than Zoom. Anyways, so what we want to focus on is we want to make sure that, number one, in general, our thoughts are positive and that we are wanting to attract the right things. So it started off, affirmations I always thought were kind of silly until I started doing them and I started realizing how powerful they can be. It doesn't have to be anything big, but I started originally, Ninja tells you, well, write down, I enjoy earning X amount of money this year. And while there's a real positive thing to that, when I found that when it becomes disconnected from what your daily routines are, it's very hard to think about from day to day. Well, I'm focusing on my yearly income. Because how much is your day-to-day really affecting your yearly income on a macro level, right? If you are focusing, if I'm saying, well, I want to make 50 grand this year, 100 grand, or whatever that number is, but it's disconnected from the items that you need to do to get you there, well, then focusing on that just ends up becoming this disappointing cycle of huge goals and not hitting them. And that sucks. And I know that even myself, we'll probably do a class just on goal setting in general, but I know that I had probably a 3-year period of comfort where I'm I was producing it, it was just my wife and I. We don't have an extravagant lifestyle, and I said, well, hey, I want to produce $8, $9, $10 million. And I'd always be 5, 6, 7. And I started realizing, well, you didn't set a big enough why. You didn't have enough of a challenge. You earned the amount of money you needed to make. And sometimes we kind of get in that hole of we only earn what we really need instead of becoming really, truly successful. You can make a lot of money in this industry. And you can also not make a lot. And that's what we're really, no matter what we say about, yes, we want to help people. And yes, we love what we do, but we're in this to for the commission dollars, right? At the end of the day. So what we need to focus, what I've found helped instead is, instead of saying and I would encourage you, just try it for a month. Even if you just write something down 5 times, or even if you just say it to yourself in your head 5, 10 times, not just, well, I want to earn this money this year. I'm going to do X actions today that move the needle. So instead of focusing on, well, I want to earn this amount of money this year, I enjoy putting 5 listings on the market this month, or I will make 10 reach outs to my clientele today. So if you focus on the leading indicators, the leading indicators are your conversations. If you break down where your business is coming from, we have the lagging indicators, which is how many closings you have, how many pendings, how many active listings, but those are all caused by your leading indicators, which is how many conversations are you having, and how many people are you getting in touch with, and what are you having those conversations about. So if we focus on the leading indicators, and if your affirmation for the day, and like I said, it doesn't have to be written down, even if you just look in the mirror in the morning in your head and you say, all right, today my focus is on making these 10 phone calls, or these, whatever that number is for you. That really changed things for me. And it doesn't have to be, it can be as specific or as non-specific as you want, but I've really found that helped. And focusing on, once I've got that, especially listings, because in this market, I know that I was talking to Lauren yesterday, and I'm sure you guys are the same, running around with buyers right now sucks, right? Like, it does. And it's taking a ton of your time. It's taking a ton of your energy. It's taking away from your family for you to write 10 offers to get 1 accepted. Whereas if you're focusing on listings, and we can help you with the efficiency, but I have it myself. I could put a listing on the market from the time that I go to the appointment to the going on the market. It's less than 5 hours. And that's including the prep. So, and then probably less than 20 hours from beginning to close. For me, it's a pretty damn good deal. So if you can focus on that instead of just on deals. So I would encourage you, and we can go further. Like I said, we'll probably do one just specifically about goal setting. But the thing to think about as well is, and you don't have to necessarily share this with me, but is there anything that is a big roadblock right now? I know that obviously you're new in the business, but I know it was just kind of being out of the game. Tell me a little about what's stopping you from going and having a listing to be put ready on the market tomorrow? Any idea?
Don't have anybody that's looking to sell right now that I know. So.
Okay. And I know that obviously you're new, and so let's go into that a little bit. So we don't have anybody that we know that we're looking to sell.
But go out and find somebody.
So the next logical step would be, does anyone that you know who's not looking to sell know anyone who's looking to sell? And that's where having our conversations not only are Ninja kind of Ford is the family, occupation, recreation, dreams. That's a very easy phone call. But I think that in today's market, those conversations are great, but it may need to be a little bit deeper when it comes to listings. When we say, hey, I'm really having a shortage and it doesn't have to be who do you know that wants to buy or sell. Because I know that I'm not going to have that conversation with someone because I think it's too salesy. I'm just not going to have that conversation. And then when you know that you're not going to have the conversation, you don't make the phone call. And then it becomes this spiral of non-productivity. And I've been there myself. It turns into this, well, I don't want to make this phone call because I don't want to be salesy. And then I'm not bringing anything of value. And then they're just going to think that I'm bugging them for business. It's a bad cycle. I really think that the best way to do it is you can even say, hey, when you're talking to your buyers or sellers, and we'll go into a couple of kind of lead generation scripts, but it's very easy just to say, hey, I'm really having trouble with getting my buyers under contract. There's just not a lot of inventory. Do you know anybody that, might be starting to look to make a move? And then it's more of it's not a, hey, I'm asking for business. It's, hey, I'm asking for a favor for one of my clients now. It's not asking for new business. You're flipping the script. And in this, when you're having these conversations, is there anything in particular that you're worried that you're going to come up against in a conversation? Like if you're reaching out to your sphere of influence, is there anything that you say, hey, I'm really worried they're going to bring up X, Y, or Z? No, not anything in particular. Okay. Just kind of the basics. So the ones I'll just share then, what I was always worried about is, number one, I always was worried that I wasn't going to be bringing enough value and that they would kind of see through my attempt to reach out as not just a reach out, but that they would kind of see through it as into a sales call. Because I can do the same thing. If somebody calls me and they're calling to check in, well, normally they want something from me. And I always was kind of worried about being seen as a phony of, hey, they don't think Peter really cares about them. They just think this is a sales call. And the way that I overcame that, and obviously the other ones are much easier. Obviously the other one is, well, they may just reject me as maybe they want a list, but they don't want a list with me. And rejection sucks. I'll make no bones about it. The appointment, we can.
Still, a lot of times it comes down to just being in the right timing. You don't call, somebody else will.
Mm-hmm.
Or they'll get something in the mail from another realtor or something. Something that always blows me away is they say the average person moves about every 7 years
Mm-hmm.
now. I can literally track almost every person I sold a house to, and either the house that I sold for them or the house I sold to them flips again within 2 to 3 years max.
So then you are tending to have a higher turnover clientele? Do you tend to have first time buyers?
Even other people I know, I see they just bought a house, and within a year or two, I can see they're in financial trouble. They're already maxing out their mortgage way beyond what they paid for the home. And I can clearly see a pattern that they're going to be selling soon.
So then the time then to reach out is if you're seeing that 2 to 3 year mark. Yeah. So Karen Greenwood, who's a fantastic agent down in Birmingham, told me this once when I first got into the business. She said, if you are reaching out to your clientele when they are thinking about listing, you're too late. You're too late. You got to be hitting them before. And that's one of the things that's really important about it. Does not have to be. I've said this in my classes before, people just don't care about real estate unless it's their own home, and they don't care about realtors. So it's connecting with them on either a personal level or providing them something of value. I always got over the objection of, hey, they don't really want to hear from me by providing something of value. I think the best one right now is everyone's worried about their equity. Like you said, people they've bought in a hot market. If they bought 2 or 3 years ago, they may have paid, especially if they didn't buy through you, they probably paid too much for their house. They're worried, well, if I do want to move, am I going to be bringing money to the table? So I think the best reach out right now is look at your list of past clients. I'm kind of jumping ahead of myself, but that's okay. Is looking at your list of past clients or your list of people that you know. And the great thing is, you might say, well, I don't know the addresses for my sphere of influence. That's why we have Realist, and that's why we have our PRD tax searches. Reaching out and just saying, hey, if you see, and this takes some time, so just maybe a couple of days, look in their neighborhood. Hey, has anybody sold recently? Has anything sold? Not doing a full CMA, although I do think that you should be doing CMAs about quarterly for your past clients, at least twice a year, either mailed out or going and meeting with them. But just sending it can be a quick text that says, hey, just wanted you to know, I saw that X, Y, and Z house in your neighborhood sold at this price. That's great news for your equity. Is anyone going to say, well, you're an asshole for telling me that? No. Like everyone's going to say, well, oh, wow, that's awesome.
It's either they want to sell or they want to refinance to capture that equity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we've talked about HomeBot's a great tool to do that if you want to just set it up to do it automatically. That goes with refi as well. Tell your lender to start paying for it for you. That's no problem. I think the last thing I want to talk about in mindset is we can get really bogged down, and there's so many things that you can do, and you can sit there and if you were anything like me, you may wake up and you don't have any appointments today. You're like, well, okay, so what do I do? And the list can very easily get very long, and it can very easily be non-productive. And you can think, well, I know that I've been trying to want to do, maybe I should start touching some expireds or some for sale by owners, and you end up having paralysis analysis and not doing anything. At least I end up that way. And so I've said, I think that just start off with 15 minutes and just say, I'm going to make it through this 15 minute from 9 to 9:15. And I'm going to send as many texts as I can in 15 minutes. That's it. And obviously you have to take some time if you're going to do some listings in somebody's neighborhood. You got to take some time to prep that. But I never had a problem popping on the MLS while I'm not talking to anybody. That's never been a big mental block for me is looking at what's sold on the MLS. But it's just do one thing every day to move the needle. And the great thing is that 15 minutes, you start getting great responses. Say, well, I'm going to keep going. So even if it's amazing that you can sit in the office for 8 hours and you can have nothing that moves the needle because you're doing paperwork or you're deal doctoring or you got 3 addendums to write or you're, doing whatever, or you can take 15 minutes and actually move the needle in your business. So that's, I think, any like mindset questions. I know that's kind of a weird topic to start off with and those things. Okay. So now let's talk about honing up these skills. If you haven't been, I'm going to just check the Google Meet again here real quick to make sure that it's still, anybody have any questions on the Google Meet? I don't know that it is. Yeah, I'm not watching it as well. I think on the Google Meet, by the way, if you have questions, you can raise your hand and it'll notify me. Oh, okay. Sorry. See, I got to keep this chat up. So Nora, you mentioned no one wanting to sell. Can I just, Nora, I'm going to unmute you. Is that okay? Or you are unmuted? And that's no one wanting to sell. That's where we talked with David, where we said then the next kind of a level becomes who then do they know? And can you type in the chat? You said the time lapse. What the time lapse of what? I'll kind of just watch that as we're going. I'll let you respond as we kind of go on to the next thing. But I'll pop back to that. Can you pull up the Meet so that you can see the chat? Because I'm going to miss stuff. I think. Is that possible? And I'm gonna have Alice pull up the chat so I don't miss these chats. Welcome aboard.
Hi, thanks. I had to get the printer situated.
Cool. We just went through a little bit of mindset, focusing on your leading indicators instead of your lagging. So if you're gonna do an affirmation in the morning, it's not just I want to produce this much, I want to make this much. It's I will make these 10 reach outs today, or I will do the activities that I need to get 1 new listing this week, and really focusing on that. And also knowing yourself and knowing kind of the objections that you have. I know the ones that I have in my brain. I don't feel I'm bringing enough value. I don't feel that I, bring enough to make these reach outs. So let's talk about skill set. Can you see it? You can? Okay, just let me know if there's.
I can't see any.
Oh, you can't see it?
Stats,
Oh.
but, I can see that she's asking if the speaker's working. Nora?
It is not. I got you. Time lapse. Nora, you may be talking about, Nora was saying that time lapse is a reason that they don't call. I think that she's talking about sometimes you've got your past clients, and these past clients may have been 5 years ago. And it's really kind of weird to have your real estate agent reach out and just say, hey, I haven't talked to you in 5 years. It's very tough to just say, well, how's it going? How's your family? How's it, well, you haven't talked to me for 5 years. Why the hell are you reaching out? Yep, I got you. So Nora, my suggestion to you would be that is where having something of value is. It is a very easy call or text message to just say, hey, I know we haven't talked for a while, but I happened to be, even if you didn't, hey, I happened to be showing a house in your neighborhood and I saw that X had sold in your neighborhood. Or, hey, I happened to be pulling some comparables for another client. I know that we haven't talked in a long time, but I thought this might be something that you would want to know. It's because it's tough. If you haven't, especially if you've been in the business a long time, it's hard to go back to somebody you haven't talked to. It might have been 10 years. But again, if you're bringing something that's valuable that they want to know what their house, not necessarily what their house is worth, but they want to know that their value is increasing. That's a great way to reach out when it's been a time lapse. Just say, hey, I know we haven't talked for a while, but I happened to be looking around in your neighborhood and I saw X. I think that's a great way to do it. I wonder if I can keep this in like a smaller tab and then keep the presentation up, or I'll just check the chats occasionally here. All right. So our actual skills, because we know that whether we have the best mindset, if we don't pair it with a skill set, it doesn't mean anything. Obviously our number 1 is going to be lead generating. We'll talk a little bit about it. And the most important thing about the lead generation is that you have a million different ways that you can lead generate. We're not going to go into individually about expireds and for sale by owners and all that stuff, because number 1, it would just take us too long. And number 2, it would just be kind of not exactly the point of what this class is. If we wanted to do one of those individually, we certainly could. But having effective lead generation and consistent lead generation. I know that for myself, the second of those was always the problem. It was not necessarily effectively lead generating, as being consistent. It's very easy when you got, like, how many buyers did you have to show to yesterday? How many showings?
For the one buyer we did?
Just in general yesterday.
Oh, well, 4
And it was over what kind of a time span?
the whole day.
Yeah. So when you're running around, it's not exactly like you're like, oh, hey, I've got a ton of time to be lead generating.
Right.
That's tough. It's very easy to be lead generating when you have no buyers and no sellers.
Yeah.
But sometimes that can be just as hard because you say, well, where do I start? So that's what leads to what's called the real estate roller coaster. I know we've talked about that in the past, but that's where just setting aside just like 15 minutes in the morning. Hey, if you only make if you send 5 text messages in the morning, you've still done more to move your business forward than you did by, realistically, to move those buyers that you're running around with. They're already your clients. Statistically speaking, you will get them under contract, and you've already done the work to make them your client. You're going to close them at some point. You're a good realtor. You're going to find them the right property. The work on that is basically done. You've kind of not earned your money, but you've at least earned that client. Now we want to be pushing the needle forward for that next set of clients. And I'm not saying ignore your clients. I'm not saying don't have great customer service. You should, but we need to have that balance of having great customer service and of moving the needle forward. All right. So obviously we talked about conducting the listing appointment a couple of weeks ago. So we're not going to really go into that, but a skill set that you do need to be working on is setting and conducting. So the funnel that, I'll jump ahead real quick. The funnel that every listing lead has to go through is they're a lead. You set the appointment, you conduct the appointment, they hire you as a client or use their realtor, they go under contract and they close. So if we have a ton of leads, but we can't set or conduct the appointment correctly, you're not getting to closings. You cannot skip any steps in this process. So what I would encourage you to do is, if you have a little bit of time, just kind of look at your personal business, because everyone might have a different struggle here. So for me, my biggest struggle was going from lead to appointment set, because I realized that almost all the appointments I set, I conducted. Like, I wasn't getting ghosted very often, and almost all the appointments I conducted, they became my client. So I said, okay, this is my area that I need to work on. It's going from lead to appointment set. So have you ever even thought about this, or do you know, hey, I might be struggling in one of these areas?
Yeah.
So like, what do you think for you is
For me, it's appointment conducted to client.
Okay.
Like, I just can't, like, especially if we talk about like relo.
Mhm.
Like, when I know they're doing, like, there's multiple agents, just can't get them to sign a contract.
And that's something I said, you and I, when you get a little time, we're going to sit down and we're going to go over that. Is it either you guys, do you think there's hey, I know that it's one of these? I know it's hard for you too.
Yeah.
But what about you, David?
I'd say step 1, gathering leads.
Okay. Yeah. And that's, I guess, the neglected
That's
is
right.
from 0 to 1.
I'm with David.
That's a number.
Yeah.
Change my answer. I'm with
Yeah.
David.
Well, but realistically, what is a lead? A lead is just somebody that you have their name and their phone number and maybe their email address, and they either own a home or they are planning on owning a home. I mean, that's a lead. So it doesn't have to be, well, I'm getting this. We separate out in our mind the people we know, and then are like, well, these are my real estate leads. And there's a valid thing for that. Like, if you're looking at, well, this came from Zillow, certainly that's different. But last time I checked, you can scroll through your contacts in your phone. Probably got more than 100 contacts in your phone, right? I would guess. I know I have like 1,000. And of course, like half of those are realtors, because that's how it always is. But if you look through, and you can just, like in Ninja, they just literally have you go boom and swipe through your phone, and wherever it lands, if they're a homeowner, look at their address, see what's sold in their neighborhood, send them that text. Hey, I know we haven't talked in a while. Just so you know, I was in your neighborhood the other day, and it made me think of you, and I saw this house that sold, and I'm like, that's an awesome thing for your equity. That's really easy to do. No one's gonna, not like you for it. So leads, we really have more leads than we think we have. Like Nora said, and you said, well, I know people, but they don't want to sell. And so that becomes then again, having that deeper conversation with them of, well, hey, it's a lot easier to sell to say, hey, I'm really having trouble with my buyers. I'm hoping to maybe find something that's not on the market yet. Do you know anybody that's just thinking about starting to make a move? You're not asking for business. You're asking more for a favor, and you're not really asking anything of them. which makes it a lot easier. So we'll have, like I said, we'll have individual conversations about if we've got problems with, hey, I'm realizing that, I'm setting a lot of appointments and then they're canceling, or, hey, I've got a lot of listings that I'm putting up and they're not selling. Wherever that process is, we can sit down individually and go through where that issue is. But just start noticing it. Start noticing, well, hey, I went on, even if you just have a little scratch pad, they're like, hey, I went on this many listing appointments and I won this many of them. Like, do you guys have any idea how many appointments that you've got, what percent of appointments that you win? Just start on a scratch pad. It can be that easy. You don't have to have a big fancy tracking system. You can just write down, hey, I went on an appointment this date and I won it or I didn't. And then, so without tracking, it's very difficult. And once you do start tracking, you can more predictably plan your business. If you know that, well, I'm making 5 phone calls a day or text messages or Instagram DMs or whatever it is, we'll talk about high five in a second. And you know that that's bringing you X amount of clients, you can reverse engineer and say, well, if I know that if I have 30, I think the average for real is about 35 conversations, I will in some way or another get 1 deal. Now, well, if I want to do 10 deals, I need to have 300 conversations. So you can start reverse engineering that. And, then you can really get deep into the math, but that's a very easy way to start planning your businesses. I know that I may, and if you're doing relocation, you can say, well, I know that I'll probably get a couple of reload leads. So it's not just from those conversations, but it can be indirectly as well. So just kind of keeping an eye on that can really, I know I started tracking 3 or 4 years ago, and I'm certainly not perfect about it. And Nora, you said, yeah, kind of the leads is yours as well. Nora, we can sit down as well or have a personal Zoom and we can talk about that too. All right, we'll jump back. So like we said, setting and conducting the appointment is obviously a skill. You gotta have to be a listing agent. We already know market. You guys are already all market experts. I'm not worried about that. We've already got great marketing. If you need to go through and polish your marketing a little bit, take a minute and look at it. Don't get too worried about all of these. Just kind of look and say, hey, where's one of these areas that I can brush up a little bit? Where is it that I can take some time? There is so much training that's available through Coldwell Banker. There's a ton. You can just go on YouTube and Tom Ferry's got content out there for free. Joshua Smith's got content out there for free. I'm trying to think. Ricky Caruth has got some of the best realtors and coaches in the world have got content, a ton of content for free. Or like I said, I'm here to help as well. Just take that. Hey, you're going in the car, pop on a video that's talking about listing presentation or something that you might need to change. Presentation, I'm not worried at all. You guys you should be pretty solid. You should know how to stage a house or how to help the seller stage and get ready for pictures and for showings. If you have a problem with that, let me know. You might have not done it yet. It's not that hard, honestly, to make a house look great. And then negotiation. If you are having trouble in your negotiations, it may be something we can help you. There are, what is it, CNN? I forget the exact designation. There's a couple of NAR classes for it. As a listing agent right now, your negotiation is more so not just getting offers for clients and necessarily negotiating the offer itself. It's going to be helping the client navigate multiple offers. It's going to be, can you juice out? So for example, we listed the property, we had 9 offers, 3 or 4 of them are similar. It's now, what can you juice out of those additional 3 or 4 to make sure that your average agent would have gotten them $200,000, but because your negotiation skills, now you're getting them 210. And that's what people really remember, is when you call them up and say, hey, just so you know, our offer was this, but without even doing anything, I've already got you another 10 grand. They're going to be like, oh, my real estate agent's a superhero. That's freaking fantastic. Because sometimes for us, our list price doesn't always, at least for me, doesn't always compute into dollars in somebody's pocket. And it's very easy for us to say, well, if we list it for 5 grand less or 5 grand more or whatever, it's just a number to us. But for them, it's like, well, that might be a year's worth of student loan payments. It might be they got buying a used car for their kid. So having that little bit of, if you can move the needle, even if you move the needle $1,000 for your people, now you've increased the value that you've brought to them. And then when they go to talk to their friends and say, hey, yeah, I listed with Lauren, I listed with David, I listed with Bill, and I thought I was going to get this much. And they came back, we had multiple offers and they ended up getting me this, and it put extra money in my pocket. Which another thing, just as because otherwise I will forget, if you have somebody that has lived in their house for a long time, if their SEV is lower now than it was when they bought the house, they are eligible to be exempt from their transfer taxes. Even if they are not eligible for that, bring that up at a listing appointment and say, hey, has any other realtor that you talked to, have they brought that up? Is if you're eligible, that could save you $2,500 if you live in Clarkson, you're selling your house for $300,000. That's for free. You've already brought value. So, all right. Any questions on the skill set or what the skill sets are? Are there any particular? Sounds good, Nora. Sounds good. I'll just reach out to me and we'll chat. Any questions on the skill set stuff? Or I guess the better question is, what questions do you have about your skill sets? Okay, solid. We are going to get this an hour. So this is the one that we're all here for, right? Is how do we actually generate these listing leads? This is another one that's going to be do as I say and not as I do, because I have certainly had my struggles with this. And I've listed, in my time, I've listed a lot of properties. I've also had a lot of times where I have struggled to generate the leads, and it is just the consistency. And you don't need to go into the mindset into a conversation with the mindset of I need to get a listing lead from this person. I find that if you're having the conversations, the business will come to you. If you are having a value-based conversation, the business is going to come to you. It somehow doesn't always end up coming from the people that you had those conversations with, but something about having the conversations, and because the key is being top of mind. Like we said, every person, I think on average, knows 7 realtors, not to mention the ones that they don't know that are marketing to them. They did a study. I think it actually may have been Craig Proctor, who's a Canadian trainer. And they did a study where they invented a fake realtor, and they did a survey of a neighborhood, and they said, okay, if you were to list your house tomorrow, who would you list with? And got all these different responses. And there wasn't one agent that dominated the market. For 8 weeks, they did an 8x8 mailing campaign with a fake realtor. So this is not someone they could have known, but hammered them every single week with just mailers. At the end of that 8 weeks, they did the survey again. And they said, hey, who would you list with if you're listing tomorrow? The overwhelming response was that fake realtor that they created. And kind of the moral of that story is it's not just that they know you, it's who contacted them last and who brought them value last. So who did they have their most recent valuable conversation with? Because you could be thinking, well, I sent them a calendar this month and then I saw that they listed their house to someone else. Well, okay, so you were the one to contact them last, but your contact wasn't valuable enough to make them say, oh, wait a minute, he's still the best, or she's still the best person to talk to. Again, like we said, David, you said that your clients seem to be on a much shorter time window than average. Take that into account. Even if you haven't reached out to somebody, average, I think in Oakland County here is, I think it's 7 years. I know in Macomb it's 8. See, you have to bear with me. Some of these stats I'm still learning. I don't even know what zip code we're in. So bear with me on that. But real estate generally, thankfully, works the same here as it does in Macomb.
You just look on Holcomb Road here, one you just had, that just sold it 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I just sold a couple of them down there about 3 years ago,
Yeah.
2 years ago, and they flipped over again.
Yeah. Well, my
That's
husband,
like
that
4
was like a
houses in a
super
row,
unique
just-
situation. He wasn't planning it 3,
Mhm.
but yeah, anyway. But yes, I know exactly.
It's like that whole stretch
That whole
there
stretch
just
is starting
flipped
to go.
over.
Because the one next
twice,
door
I
to
think.
my listing has been up for sale by owner. I don't know if you've seen that one. And they won't put any photos of the house up because they're just trying to sell it for the land, like the
Okay.
property itself, but they've got it listed at like almost $1 million. Like, yeah, they're nuts, because I'll tell you, the house next door to them is the one I just did, and it appraised and sold at 410. And it's on the same amount of property.
So Lauren, I know that reaching out to FSBOs is no fun, and
Oh, I do it all the time.
that may be one to give them a call and just say, hey, just so that you know,
Oh, yeah.
we sold for
They've
this.
heard from me.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I like got in the habit from when I started and I didn't have any leads, is I would just constantly write cards to expireds and FSBOs.
Yeah, and that's
That's good.
Well,
It's-
until you get the crazy person and there's a reason that their listing has expired and they've been through 4 agents, but you learn that.
but at least, statistically speaking, for example, with for sale by owners, statistically speaking, 94% of them will end up either with a realtor or off the market. only 6% of, and at least that was as of 2019, 6% of FSBOs were selling by themselves. 6%. That's
Well, they don't, the thing
It's
about
a dismal
FSBOs is
number.
they don't know what they don't know,
Mhm.
right? So if you've ever had, like I had a buyer who fell in love with a FSBO house, and it was such a challenging transaction because these people, I think they thought it was gonna be like, write your number on a cocktail napkin, and then we'll call you when we move out. Like, they had no idea all of the nuances to like taxes, you
Mhm.
know what I mean? Like, it was so far over their head.
right.
So here I'm trying to do the best thing for my clients, but also trying to educate these sellers on like, no, this isn't just like a handshake deal. Like, you're selling a house, this is kind of a big deal.
Yeah. And did you find that there was a specific area that they were really just ignorant in?
Quite honestly, the whole process.
Okay.
They didn't know about appraisals. They did not understand that people were gonna come in and do an inspection on their house. Like, that just totally floored them.
I think that some percent owners have said, well, and this is where we get into problems if we say that as realtors, our only value is, I've heard this a million times on the forums, that in your listing presentation, you can say, well, I can get the best price for your house and blah, blah, blah. I know the market. Well, but now that information is available. Zillow is now, rock and rolling with solds. And so you can, if you really wanted to, and you put enough time into it, you could comp and price your house appropriately. That's where we as agents do not bring, not that we're not bringing enough value, we are not imparting that value onto your clients. So I actually will I always go through the process, and I tell them the things that we kind of do on the back end. We let them know that, yes, if a real estate transaction goes perfectly, could you have maybe done it by yourself with a little bit of help? Yeah, probably, maybe. But what happens when you didn't fill out that seller's disclosure right? Now you're being sued. What happens when something happens and you got a title issue that needs to be cleared? What happens when your appraisal comes in low? I always say, like, moving is not fun. If it was a fun and easy process, none of us would have jobs. So that's where that value is. Kind of being a bit of a doom and gloom can sometimes help in a conversation with a FSBO. But we're not going to go heavily into FSBOs. But so let's talk about, all right, what are we going to do to move the needle today? Everyone in your sphere of influence, which for me is everyone that you have a phone number and a name for or an email address, needs to be getting at least some sort, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, like, I know for a lot of people in my age bracket, they would rather get a text message than a phone call. I know some coaches are very big on, like, it has to be a phone call. Well, what if they don't want to be reached with a phone call? Well, then it shouldn't be a phone call. If someone wants a call them. If you know someone really likes to receive mail, okay, reach them the way that they want to be reached, not the way that you want to reach them. If you know that, hey, I've got somebody that I know and I don't really have their phone number, okay, Facebook Messenger and Instagram DMs are a really easy way to just say, hey, like, and again, some of the coaches will say, well, that should be a precursor to a phone call. It doesn't have to be. I have conversations where I've had to actually sold houses with people only communicated on Facebook Messenger. Sometimes because they're international, sometimes because that's just the way they want to run things. But at minimum, especially all your past clients, at least quarterly. So that means if you haven't done one this year, do it this week. Reach out and just, I would, you don't necessarily have to mail them a CMA. I would, for the amount of time and effort that it costs you. It doesn't have to be a giant booklet, but just to pop onto Cloud and do like 2 or 3 pages and bind it up, or even do a 1-line, real comp search that just shows, hey, like, these are the 5 properties in your area, and with a little note on it. That takes you 2 minutes, 3 minutes. You can mail it out. If you're using HomeBot, it's kind of doing it for you. But at least at minimum quarterly, I would encourage those to be not only the value of the house, but at that time, if you can have a little bit of a personal conversation, great. If not, if it's just the one text that says, hey, you'll be getting a CMA, just let me know if you have any questions. That's fine too, at least just to stay on top of mind. I still am finding that mailings really still work. I send, and I could show you my exact mailing schedule. My mailing schedule was, I always did New Year's cards instead of Christmas cards because everyone got Christmas cards and no one gets anything for New Year's. So I sent those out like mid-January. I always sent out baseball schedules in March. I would send a list of like fireworks in June. We'd send, so I did end up doing, I think 6. We'd send football schedules, baseball, football, hockey schedules. Sometimes we do 2 football schedules. We do the college and we do the pro football schedules. And then we would do I like to do a Thanksgiving card. And then I would do a like a Halloween back to school type of postcard too. And the great thing is, once you've kind of got those set, you just reuse them every year. It's, it's not a big thing to, and you can go on any, Express Docs has a ton of templates. Back at You has a ton of postcard templates. Canva has free postcard templates that you can literally go onto Canva and write, boom, Halloween. Oh, here's a postcard. It might cost you $1 to download it. All right, cool. Easy peasy. And then the staff here, I'm sure, can send these out to, right? You guys can send out mailings if they give you a mailing list. See, this is why we pay these guys. We've got great staff here. And if you're not taking advantage of what CB has to offer, well, that's how you start realizing, well, maybe why am I paying Coal Bank all this money? Maybe X, Y, or Z broke. Use the things that are here. We have a ton of stuff here. Make sure to use it. And if you don't know what we have, talk to me and I'll make sure that you know. All right. So definitely, like we said, so that's total. Your sphere should be getting a minimum of 10 to 12 reach outs from you every year. And like we said, those can be in whatever form that you like. But for listings specifically, I really like to look at, like I said, look at your past client base and look at how often the houses are turning over. Look in that area, say, all right, if they are statistically speaking going to be moving in the next year, hit those people a little bit harder. And in their conversation, just say, hey, I saw that you had, and this is where Facebook is fantastic. We'll talk about high five in a second. Hey, I saw that you had a new baby, and you know that they have a small house. Hey, are you thinking at all about maybe making an upsize? Hey, I saw that your, kids graduated, college. Congratulations. Are you thinking at all that this might be a little bit too much house for you? Starting to have those conversations, and maybe it's like, yeah, we're thinking about that, but it's 2 years down the road. Well, now okay, I have kind of a time frame, and I'm going to check. And it just said, hey, do you mind if I check back in with you in like 6 months, just to see if we're still on that same time frame, and then follow up with them in 3 months. Always half the time of what you told them, because if you wait 6 months, they've already listed it with somebody else. It always happens. I don't know how that is, but so half the time that you tell them. We won't go into too much into geographic farming, circle prospecting, that sort of thing. If you are interested in any of those specifically, we can talk about them individually, but it would just be too much to go into all of them. I would encourage you to, no matter what you're doing, have the same mindset and the same, hey, I'm bringing value, whether it's expireds, whether it is, circle prospecting right now, if you just had some time and you said, hey, I want to hop on the phone, it's very easy to have a non-salesy conversation with someone, especially if it's your listing, like that one on Holcomb, get and you can also circle prospect via mail. Circle prospecting is just reaching people around a listing that's sold. If you want to do it by mail, if you want to say, hey, I know that we're sending a just sold postcard from Coal Banker. Well, how about we send 5, 6, 7 more? And if it's something, we can help out with what the actual content that should be. Because like you said, it seems that they come in spats. One house goes up for sale and then the next ones do. So it's getting in that door early. I know we've said, well, I don't know anybody that wants to sell. I know that we've said, well, do we know anybody who does? But also from just I guess, who are we reaching out to that we know doesn't want to sell? How are we coming to that conclusion that I don't know anybody that wants to sell? Is it, hey, nobody's called me to list? Or is it, hey, I'm having a bunch of conversations and people are just saying, hey, I'm not moving?
I think right now, my experience is people are saying, I'm not moving because I'm not going to do this whole buying situation where I have to pay over for houses and all that. So
that's fair.
I think I've heard a lot of people be like, hey, I'd be interested in the upside of selling right now because everything's going over asking and we could be out of this house in 30 days, but then I still need to go somewhere and I'm not interested in playing that whole game right now.
So let's talk about that. That's where client education is a big thing. So yes, statistically speaking, we have one of the highest markets we've ever had. I think actually house prices have hit, I believe that we've passed 06. It's pretty big. Now that being said, what was the interest rate in 2006? 9%? So having the conversation that, number one, hey, let's make it conditional. How about we just start taking a look at a couple of houses and then we can decide if there's something that's in the market that can work for you. But I think that what's even more effective is saying, well, what are you paying for your mortgage now? Because we know that it's not the sale price of the house, it's what they're paying per month that matters. You could have $1 million. what is it? John North just said this to us in our managers meeting, that he said, you can make any deal a good deal if you can either control the price or the terms, right? So if it's a $1 million house, but it's for some reason only $1,500 a month, well, that's a good deal. So I might go over that with them, and just to have hey, do you guys use the ATA app at all?
Yep.
Use the ATA app and say, hey, what price range do you think that you might want to be in? Here's what it might cost you per month. And it might have that kind of aha moment of, wait a minute, I can go and get, especially if they bought 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago and their interest rate's higher, they might be able to say, wait a minute, for $100 more than I'm paying now, I can go up $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 in a house from what I'm in now. So it might be that conversation that's worthwhile having. It's certainly it's a tough objection to overcome, because it may also just be that they don't want to emotionally compete in that marketplace.
Well, I think that's what it is. It's like, I don't want to fall in love with something and then lose it, and now I'm disappointed with right now. Like, I'm totally happy where I'm at.
I don't know that there's a good answer to that. We as human beings respond more to pain points than we do to pleasure points. If we're more afraid of something than the potential upside, we're not going to do it. I think that it may be possible to say, hey, let's just kind of casually look. It may be possible to say, well, hey, is the price point we're in, is it as competitive as we think? If they're in, at least right now, if they're in the 400 plus, it's not as competitive as if they're in the 300 and under. So if they're a move up buyer, it may not be quite as much of a concern. If they're a move down buyer, it might be a big concern. If it's like, hey, we need to be under 200 grand, well, that's going to be a tough one.
Seems like an ideal market for those people that actually want to move south, that are ready to retire, or job changes where they're done with Michigan and want to move to a warmer climate.
Yeah, and that's something too. So then the question is, who are the people that are going to have the best time in this market? So of your database, let's break it down. Who is, because realistically speaking, like you said, either someone that is moving. I don't think that Florida's real estate market is quite as crazy as ours is, at least with some of the condos and things like that. Maybe somebody's moving out of state, or maybe somebody that is moving up. So that's moving into that, let's say that they're in the 250, 300 range now, and they want to move into the 4 plus. I don't see the stats as of this second, but I think it's fair to say the 4 plus isn't quite as hot. Who fits that demographic? Look through your database and say, hey, who's got a 1,500 square foot house now that maybe is getting a little bit too tight, and maybe we know that they're working from home now and they don't have a home office and they're working in their bedroom. Maybe that's a good person to reach out to, and just don't bring up, oh, hey, are you thinking about moving? But hey, I saw that you're working from home. What's your office setup like? Because hey, I'm trying to work from home too, and that can lead to that conversation of, well, I'd really like to have a place with a home office. I know that for me, I would not have made it through COVID if I did not have my own personal home office. So I told my wife, I'm like, when baby number 2 comes and they take over my office, we're moving. And so that's because think about it. The things that make people move, it's not normally that they just want a different house. Nobody likes moving. It's family change. It is job change. It is something is making them unhappy in their current house now. So the people to look for are the people that that are unhappy in their current house. If you are thinking about going into geographic farming, circle prospecting, expired for sale owners, geographic farming especially, just don't get into it if you're not willing to do it for 12 to 18 months. If you're not willing to consistently hit a market for 12 to 18 months, just don't do it. That's how long it takes on average. And we can go into that. If anyone is interested in doing that, we can go into it. But what questions do we have on the conversations that we need to be having with the people that we already know?
Even something as simple as, how's your work going? How's your job going? Are you working from home? You back at the office? How's your commute?
Yeah.
Checking into a big is like young families or anyone I know who has kids, just like this whole past year trying to navigate. They're in school, they're out of school, they're not playing sports.
Childcare.
Yeah. So all that, I check in about like their kids, like it's so-and-so back in school. Now it's like going to be summer vacation. Is he going to play flag football? This, like just things that I know that they're doing that last year didn't necessarily happen and kind of threw off like the normal routine.
And parents love to talk about.
And they love to talk about their kids.
People love to talk about the kids and their
Well,
dogs.
not only that, and they love to talk about and complain about what a struggle this last year and a half has been with all of those things. As
Yeah.
you said, like sports and
So
and
I
all
find
those
like the
things.
kids,
Crazy.
like that just opens a door. And
For
but to
sure.
your point too, like work, right? What's going on with work? Are you back in the office? is the whole office back? Are you, I know some offices are doing like you're in Monday, Wednesday, you're in Tuesday, Thursday, like how's the schedule going?
Here's another thing to think about,
Bring it all back to COVID.
or two things to think about. Number one, I know more people that have homeschooling is now more mainstream than it's ever been. I actually was this is why I'm such a nerd. I was homeschooled for 2 years as a kid as well, and back then that was in the mid-90s. There was like you were a weirdo,
Yeah.
and now it's just not the case with moms and dads seeing virtual learning. They're like, I got to teach the kid anyways. Why am I sitting them in front of a virtual learning screen, and then I got to reteach it to them anyways? I'll just bring them home, we'll homeschool, and I don't have to worry about the virtual learning and dealing with DocBox or whatever the hell they got to do with turning these assignments. Well, now if we're doing virtual, or if we're learning from home, or we're homeschooling, well, now we need a space. That's a great opportunity to bring up, hey, maybe we need a little bit more space. If we're talking about, hey, we're working from home, what's kind of that situation like? I know a lot of people that are now working remotely. I have a friend of mine actually that we just set them up with a house in Tennessee. They lived in Illinois, and they said, you're going to be virtual all the time. And they said, well, wait a minute. So husband got a job in Tennessee. She said, why am I paying the insane tax rate that I'm paying in Illinois and the insane property taxes? We'll go to Tennessee. So maybe some of those people that the thing to look at might be, hey, if you're working from home, is that going to be a permanent thing? Would it change at all? If you didn't have to worry about a commute, would you change where you want to live?
I think a lot of people did too. I think when people realize I don't have to be in Royal Oak or Berkeley because my office is in Troy and I want to be, 20 minutes from my office, suddenly now I don't have an office anymore. And so I feel like we kind of had like the great commute north. And I think we saw like Clarkston, Lake Orion, Fenton, Grand Blanc all kind of started to blow up of people who used to live down more in the suburbs of Detroit because that's where they were working.
Mhm.
And the kids aren't in school. So if they're virtual, they can essentially log into any district.
And that also kind of starts another conversation of if you have people that are worried about school districts, that may be another conversation. Maybe it's worth reaching out to some of the contacts and I'll do some of that as well. Reaching out to some of the contacts at the school districts to see, hey, somebody's in district and they move out, they want to stay virtual. Is there and I don't know the answer to that, but it might be something. I'll do a little bit of looking into that to see if they can stay in a certain district.
Clarkston now doing school of choice.
Oh, it's so it got complicated.
Yeah.
It's my client right now.
I'm the wrong person to ask about that. Lauren was telling me yesterday, it's where when I'm from the east side, like school of choice is very, very easy. And it seems like out here, it's very complicated and difficult.
My
Just here,
client
just
trying
watch.
to get in under
Mhm.
Grand.
Mhm.
Their whole thing is they wanted the kids in Clarkson schools. They live now like in north end of Grand Blanc. And they were saying, you probably know better than me, that you have to reapply every year. So because you're in for first grade, you're not grandfathered in for
Right.
second, and then your siblings aren't promised.
Correct.
So you might move to the Clarkson, you might do school of choice, and your oldest daughter is in for first grade, but then in second grade, she's not, and your son never even gets in. Because you have to go back every year, and then you have to do it every year for every child. Which I know other districts, once you're in, you're in.
You're in.
And then your siblings are promised.
Yep.
And as opposed to Macomb County, that's the difference between Clarkson too, is it year after year after year after they do these, they strengthen. I mean, they strengthen restrictions as opposed to loosening them.
Right.
Yeah.
And it goes from, hey, these are the people that live with their grandma,
You got it.
and now you gotta prove it, and it's a whole,
Yeah. And like I
The
said,
reason I brought it up, I just saw a new listing in Brandon Township, Brandon Schools, but the agent put on there an agent comments, has Clarkston School of Choice as your option.
is there
I'm
from,
thinking, is that?
Oh, yeah.
That
Yeah.
feels
Yeah.
like
Anything.
a total liability, because it's not, I mean,
Yeah.
technically, right,
Technically,
it's
right.
school of choice, so technically that's right. But anyone who hasn't done the research, and they're gonna buy that house banking on their kids going to Clarkson
Right.
schools, they're in for a really big surprise.
is there something like, from what I always heard, like Brandon schools were fine too. Is there's not as,
Well,
okay.
it's a swing.
Okay.
I don't know about
Gotcha.
They
Cause
sold
it's,
off two of their schools that they built that they didn't need and they couldn't afford them, so they sold them off for pennies. They sold them for cheaper than what the land value was.
okay.
They're better.
Some mismanagement.
Right, yeah.
I was gonna say there's always like I said, I just use the example of Lapeer Community Schools just because that's where my wife works. But there was always this perception that like, they're not very good until you actually get in and it's like, well, most of the great school reviews, it's, well, they don't have quite as many programs as you would like in Rochester. Well, but if you're, this is where I've said the conversation that I have about school districts, because number one, there's only a very limited amount that we should be saying about school districts anyways, because it becomes a fair housing issue.
Right. And
Be very careful.
You do your homework.
Yes.
And then you let me know where you want me to look for your house.
Yes.
So
Be very careful.
Superintendent right now, he quit, and they're on the job search for Brandon.
I would say number one, start having the contacts in the school districts, put them in contact with the districts directly. Number two, there's not, just because you have the district is well rated by great schools doesn't mean different kids might need different things. And so if you have a child that has a certain need, well, the best school district might not be the best for that child.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very cautious about recommending or not recommending school districts to anybody.
Do her research and then tell me.
Yep.
I want to be here. I don't want to be here. I want to be here. Okay.
You can facilitate the conversations, but don't be having those. It's, hey, we've got the resources, but you're not, because the other thing too is, last time I checked, we're not on the board of directors for the school. We're not education administrators. We're real estate professionals. Stay in your lane.
But if you're fairly new to Clarkson or this area, the one thing with Clarkson and Clarkson schools is the reputation is, I mean, it's.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard.
That's
And sometimes,
what precedes it. Whether it's grade schools, blue ribbon, none of that. It's the reputation is.
and sometimes reputation can be just reputation. And sometimes it can be,
For sure.
like for a long time on the east side, there was a reputation that New Haven schools weren't all that great. They then started building cheap new construction. Young families started moving in, just built a brand new middle school. Boom, things start to shift. So again, they said, I would also have and I also had people that they wanted to live in Chesterfield, which is Anchor Bay schools. Chesterfield 30 years ago was not great. Anchor Bay is now one of the best school districts in the state. And so sometimes too, your clients' perceptions also have that same weight. So that would be another thing to reach out about is, hey, what is your situation for school? I'll try and make a couple calls and see if I can find out about virtual and what the deal is with any of that.
And again, I had a family move from Clarkson schools to Oxford schools, and for the remainder of the year, they could finish, because they were all virtual, both boys could finish out the year they were in middle school in Clarkson schools because they weren't in the school. It was kind of a question mark as to what would happen in the fall if they're back in school, if they're still online. Well, what if half the year they're remote and then they go back?
Mhm.
What school district are they part of? But they did get clearance to finish out the year because they weren't in school anyway.
And this is where we as the real estate professionals, not only, we don't need to have those conversations, but we do need to be starting to look at the resources to put in their hands to make sure that they can have those conversations. Mm-hmm. And that's also a great thing, just because you brought up the end of the school year. If you have people bounce around in your brain that are, hey, that they've got kids with school year, they may have been waiting to the end of the school year to move. So that's something if you know somebody that's got kids, if you're having a conversation with them, just say, hey, is the end of the school year changing anything with your family situation? It doesn't need to be salesy. So I think if I was going to say, all right, what can we do? Because we don't want to have because I'm getting to the end of this hour and I want to let you guys get on with your time. If you're going to do 3 things in the next, let's say 7 days to move the needle, start looking at your past clients. Just go through the list. If you need it, we can get a list for you. If you don't have a list of all your past clients, we can get a list. Just send a text message to each of them. Even whether you've talked to them, haven't talked to them in 10 years, or you haven't talked to them in 2 years. The way that I look at it is, let's say that you reach out to them and they tell you to go screw yourself, right? Which they're not going to do because they used you and they like you.
Wow.
If you know that you've got a past client that you don't want to work with.
Or they just won't answer. But
Yeah. But here's the thing
wait a couple
too.
days and send it again.
Well, here's the thing.
Maybe this didn't go through.
So-
Keep poking the bear.
If they don't answer, it doesn't necessarily mean they don't want to talk to you, but it might mean they understand that they've got something of value and they just don't feel the need to. Some people are just, hey, they're busy. It's not on their priority list. Just as an example, I had a client that we sold their house in 2015. We sold them a house. Always send them updates. Always send them, my mailings. Send them a text every quarter. Never heard back ever. Called me about 3 weeks ago and said, hey, I really liked working with you last time, and I want you to come list my house. So just because they don't respond does not mean that they didn't receive it or they don't care. But the way that I look at it is if you don't reach out, you know that they're not going to work with you, right? There's no way
Sometimes
that
even with current clients where you have a listing with them or you're showing them houses, you send them an email, call them, whatever. They may ghost you for days,
Yeah.
and then finally you get an answer back when they want something.
Yeah.
So it's
And you have to
same thing as
remember,
with prospects.
people don't want a screwdriver, or they don't want a drill, they want a hole, right? Nobody wants a drill just for the sake of having a drill. They want a drill so they can have holes drilled, right? You are not their buddy. You are providing a service to them. And last time I checked, like if I need a TV, I don't need or a couch. I don't need Gardner White to be reaching out to me every 5 minutes because I've already got a couch, right? But when I need a couch, I'll then go to them and say, hey, sorry, I haven't answered your emails in 20 years, but now I need a couch, right? Which I would encourage you, especially if you're doing a lot of email drips. I have in my signature. So if you get an email from me, it will say Peter Touring Realtor.
Mhm.
If you get an email from me, it says that. It's in my Google name. So my first name is Peter Touring, my last name is Realtor. So even if they never open your emails, they're seeing Lauren Fortin, Bader Realtor, Bill Paulson Realtor every time. So I would say, like I said, if you're going to do something to move the needle, send a text to every one of your past clients. So you know that if you don't reach out to them, they're not going to work with you. 88% of people don't list with the same person they did before. So there's no risk. The only thing, and you say, well, what if they say no? Well, if you don't reach out, it's a no by omission,
No,
right?
anyway.
Exactly. So just start with your past clients. If you don't have past clients, look through your phone list and see, all right, who's got kids? Who's got maybe kids that are leaving? Look for the life changes. Send them a text. If you send 5 text messages a day, that'll take you what? Maybe if you got to look up on the MLS what their house is, maybe it takes you 20 minutes. You can find 20 minutes, even if you're like doing it while you're watching TV at night, right? Pop on a RealComp, boom. Hey, they live at 123 Main Street. Oh, what's sold near there? Okay, that's an easy one. Hey, just so you know, that's the easy script. Hey, I was in your neighborhood the other day, and I thought of you, and I saw that 124 Main Street sold for this amount of money. That's great news for your home equity. Let me know if you have any questions. That's it. And then you just copy and paste it and just change out the address. So that would be the one thing I would do. The second I would do is you're already cruising Facebook or Instagram when you get up anyways. Look on and see who's got birthdays, who has, if you're cruising through, don't just be mindlessly scrolling. So anyone that's got a birthday that you have a phone number for, send them a text or a call. And just say, hey, happy birthday. I really hope you have a great day. I hope husband or wife's name spoils you today. They always get a laugh. If you don't have the number, do it on Facebook Messenger or even on their wall, but just don't put happy birthday. Put, hey, like something that is different than someone else is going to. Hey, if it's somebody that you're, you can make a joke with them getting old, whatever it is. While you're scrolling through, if anybody has a life change, you're starting to see graduations now. That's a great way to either don't just like stuff because, as you know, you'll just see on Facebook, boom, so-and-so and 195 other people liked. Comment on it or send them a message. Hey, congratulations. That's so awesome. I'm sure you're so proud of so-and-so's name. Boom. But that's a very, very easy way. And that is a 0 rejection rate to go on and wish people happy birthdays and comment on their stuff. So that would be is that fair? Are those like a couple action items that we can 100% do in the next week or so?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. What other questions do you guys have about, hey, what kind of actions do I need to be taking? Anything like that?